Hello, everyone, and welcome to our June Advocate webinar. Thank you for spending a half an hour of your day with us today to talk all through recess tips and tricks for in-district meetings during August recess. We're calling this webinar today Recess with the Best because we have an amazing guest speaker with us here today. My name is Julie Eller, and I'm the manager of Grassroots Advocacy, and I'm so excited to talk to you all today about your summertime advocacy agenda. With me today is Kerry Wong. She is someone who truly embodies the mission of the Arthritis Foundation. She serves as a Platinum Ambassador for the Arthritis Foundation and the New York Advocacy Vice Chair for the State Committee there. Carrie is just amazing, and today she's going to talk through her steps for success during August recess and ways that advocates and ambassadors can work together to really elevate our mission during our summertime. So thank you so much to Carrie for being on, and she'll come and talk with everybody in just a few minutes. But before we get started in the meat of our presentation, I just want to give you guys the opportunity to identify the Q&A and chat features in your WebEx platform. Using those, you can send in questions throughout the webinar, and we'll do our best to address those at the conclusion of our slides. We'll also have a chance to ask your questions live right at the end of our slide deck. Thank you. So to start off, I just want to give you all a quick introduction to August recess. Now, August recess is a very cool time each year when Congress adjourns from their session in Washington, D.C. and returns to their home state. Some interesting history about August recess is that originally it came into being as a result of a lack of air conditioning during the hot months in Washington, D.C. in the late 1850s and into the early 1900s. Soon afterward, we had an expansion of our session where Congress was meeting all year round, and they realized that they really needed some time to, one, escape the heat, but also to return to their home states and meet with their constituents and hear from them and listen to their concerns and needs so that they could return to the Capitol revitalized and ready to discuss those pressing issues for their constituents. So every August, we experience this August recess where we have a month-long time to meet with our members of Congress in person in districts in our home states. So this year's August recess, you may have heard in the news, might be a little bit different than our traditional August recesses. And why is that? Well, this year, the Senate has abbreviated their recess to only 1 week at home. But we're not going to let that stop us. Just because our August recess is blunted right now, it doesn't mean that it won't be put back on the books and our senators will be able to come and be in your home states for the full month. But for right now, it's going to be that abbreviated week. So as we talk about these visits, we can keep that in mind. But what we want to make sure that we're doing is scheduling our meetings throughout the summer, throughout August, and even throughout July without any hesitation, because let's say all of a sudden that August recess for our senators does get put back on the books, well, our meeting will already be put on the calendar. So we're going to continue with the framework that it's possible we'll get to meet with our member in person, but if not, we can still have a really successful August recess visit where we're talking with our member of Congress's in-district staff about the real amazing work that we can do together to break down barriers to care for people with arthritis. And we want to make sure that this event is inclusive for all. So if you are not able to attend a visit in person, we are going to provide you with virtual opportunities through our Action Center, which we'll demo for you a little bit later on in our webinar today, which will allow you to send a letter to members of Congress in 5 minutes or less. So you'll be able to share your story on behalf of the legislative issues and asks that we're addressing in August recess right from home. But our bulk of today's conversation is going to be about how we can really elevate that work. How can we take it from our virtual advocacy at home to in-person visits with our legislators and their staff and amplify it further by coordinating our efforts with other advocates and ambassadors in our local neighborhoods this August recess. And we couldn't have found a better speaker for today. Really, we didn't find her. She found us. Kerry Wong really exemplified our message in terms of amplifying the actions that we can take together, because last year, Carrie organized a volunteer group of advocates and ambassadors to go with her to her in-district meetings with her senators in New York State. And Carrie really took the initiative to be our grassroots leader, to cultivate our group, to make sure everybody understood their role for an August recess visit. And in doing so, she became the model for what we're going to try to do this year. So before we dig into the meat of it, what we really want to make sure you know is that regardless of what you are able to do in terms of the time that you can devote, there's absolutely an opportunity to engage in August recess, either online or in person, sending a written note and beyond. And we're going to explore all of those things. But we're going to talk about Carrie's immediate success from last year. And at this point, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Carrie so that she can introduce herself and tell you all a little bit about herself.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much, Julie, for the incredible intro and build-up. And now I've got to try and kind of live up to that great reputation that you've put out there for me. For anybody who doesn't know me, taking a look at this picture, I am the person on the right standing up with the exact Arthritis Foundation color green sweater there. I actually go crazy going shopping, specifically like green shopping, and I will order things and then return them if they might be a nice green, but they're not arthritis green. And so I need to make sure, just because I'm a dork, that I need to have exactly the right shade of arthritis green when I'm going out and doing things like this. Also, just to give you a little bit of, I guess just some basic history. So I have inflammatory arthritis that is part of a rare disease called sarcoidosis. I actually got involved with Arthritis Foundation before I even knew what sarcoidosis was or that I had it. Because for several years, like I'm sure many of you, we go through years and years of trying to figure out what exactly it is that's wrong with us. And so first I had a few years of people just pretty much denying that there was anything wrong with me because I looked fine, to ultimately they said, okay, yes, there's definitely something. You've got some kind of arthritis. Probably autoimmune, and then I actually spent about 4 years in rotating diagnoses from psoriatic arthritis to atypical RA to pretty much everything, under that umbrella. And so as my joints and my mobility got worse and the things that I was able to do became less and less, getting involved with the Arthritis Foundation became really, really powerful for me. I think a lot of you can probably relate to this idea that as we are able to do less and less, and we sort of feel a lot less like the person that we've always been, and it's kind of, we're not fully ourselves anymore. And what I was able to realize, what I was able to learn through the Arthritis Foundation and getting involved with advocacy especially, was that, yes, there may be some things I can't do anymore or some things that are a lot more difficult, but my mouth still works, my brain still works, and my keyboard still works. And so what that really told me and really helped me with was to see that I still, regardless of the physical things that I was going through and all of the struggles that I was dealing with in, my regular life, I still had a voice and I still had a story, and that still mattered. And getting involved with Arthritis Foundation, getting involved in advocacy really helped to empower me and helped to show me that I my voice still mattered, and, ultimately that I still mattered, and that I could still make a difference in just period, make a difference, whether it's for myself, for other people, and as I got involved, with legislation too. So I guess I'll come right into last year, as we had our task to get into, doing these August recess visits. One of the main reasons why I decided to make this a group effort rather than just kind of going off and doing it myself, honestly, it was a matter of logistics, and because so I live in Westchester County, which is just north of New York City. New York City is technically very close to me. It's only a couple miles away, but logistically, it's really, really difficult to actually get there because driving in the city is an absolute nightmare, and public transportation into the city is not always accessible. So if I had to travel with my scooter, there's not every train station would work for that. A lot of them have a lot of walking, a lot of steps, elevators that don't work, all of that. So I don't really get into the city very often, and basically I decided that if I'm going to go into the city to meet with my representatives and my senators, I was going to make sure that it was really worth it, and I was going to make the most out of that trip. So I also thought about the idea that there were a whole bunch of other advocates and ambassadors in the city, and I knew that at least a handful of them would also be trying to set up meetings. And so I thought it was kind of silly for so many of us to try and schedule meetings with the same people to share the same information and talk about the same issues. And so I figured that we would make more of an impact as a big group, and it would be, a more efficient use of everybody's time. And ultimately, kind of making it sort of like a mini summit, and it would be more impactful and more powerful, both for us as a group and for the meetings themselves. The other bonus out of that is that then I would get to see these other awesome advocates, and, as any of you who've been involved in this for a little while know, we kind of instantly become, friends and family, and we don't get to see each other often enough. And so if I set this up as a big group effort, I would get to see some of them. And so that was something that would be really cool, and I was really looking forward to it. So in order to do that, of course, I had to figure out, the basics, the who, what, when, where. Some of this was kind of set up for me, or not so much set up for me, but some of it was kind of established. I didn't have to think too much of, when are we doing this? Sometime during August recess. That part actually was, figuring out the when was probably one of the more difficult parts, because just like this year, there was a big question about when August recess was going to be. And so we had a similar issue. Ultimately, we were able to just, get things scheduled and get moving, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. But ultimately here, we just kind of had to start with figuring out, okay, so who are the New York advocates and ambassadors that would also possibly want to be a part of this this group activity, this group trip, and what, we had to figure out, what were the asks, what are the things that we're actually meeting about, what are we actually going to ask our senators to do for us, when during August recess, and then, how we move forward. Okay, so I had to do a little bit of research to kind of figure out each of these pieces. And so I actually kind of did it in a little bit different order than what we have here. So first and foremost, I had to figure out who were the representatives, who were the senators, who were our elected officials that I wanted to go and meet with. And so personally, from being involved in this for so long, I already knew who my senators were. Anybody who's new to this would need to just, it's really easy enough to figure that out. But then I had to see where their offices were. And each of my representatives have multiple offices, so I had to see kind of what was the closest office to where I lived. What was really, really great was that my two senators actually have one of their offices in the same building. And so that became my goal, is to try and schedule something for both of those senators' offices on the same day to get everybody in there and really, again, make the most of the time that we did have. So once I knew who those representatives were and where we were going, I had to figure out, okay, so who else is in that area? Who else is in that district? Ultimately, I was able to get some help from the office in order to do that. And once we figured out who I was going to be inviting, we had to figure out what each of those representatives' status was for each of the issues that we're talking about. Have they already signed on to something? Have they already co-sponsored something? Or is this something we need to really ask for their support with? So initially, I started out with, I wanted to invite everyone, all of the advocates who lived in the New York, not only in New York City, in all of the 5 boroughs, but a little bit around that. I obviously, including Westchester County, since that's where I live, so I looked to kind of expand the circle. So initially, I was able to get a list from Julie and Ben, who was our state director, and they were able to give me the list of New York advocates and ambassadors with their addresses and email addresses. Now, I will, say right off the bat, this is not something that, just randomly gets distributed all over the place. These lists are maintained and confidential and secure, and so we actually had to go through getting some permissions in order to get that list to me, and it was because obviously they know that I'm not looking to start spreading spam or anything like that. I respect the confidentiality of that list. But then I was able to, I sent out an email to everyone who was within a certain number of towns, again, the 5 boroughs of New York City, and a little bit all around that, some of Long Island, some of Westchester, and a little further north. And so I emailed everybody there. And one thing to note, if you're going to email a list of people, we want to make sure that email is, everybody is included in the blind copy, not the regular, not just emailed to everybody. Again, as a matter of maintaining everyone's privacy and confidentiality and not just sending a list around. But so then I was able to send out an email to everyone within that area and basically tell them, hey, this is what I'm looking to do, and I would love it if you would join me. If you were thinking about reaching out to your representatives during this time, why not do it with the rest of us? And ultimately, we ended up with, there were some people who wanted to go, but the schedule didn't work. But ultimately, we ended up with about 10 people who signed up to go on this trip and do it all together. By the day of the event, that 10 actually came down to 5 because some people were having either really bad flares. I think someone was having surgery. Someone was perhaps recovering from a surgery. So there were a number of health-related issues that had come up so that even the people who wanted to come, not everyone was able to. And, of course, I understand that. Everyone on this call understands that. But I made sure that when we actually went to meet with our representative staff, I made sure to let them know that, because they knew ahead of time they were expecting a group of 10. And when we showed up as a group of 5, I made sure to explain to them the reason these people aren't here is the exact reason why the rest of us are. Because this is why we do what we do, because these health issues affect us so tremendously, and because of how much they affect us, these are the things that we need. This is why we need your help. And so I think there's always going to be, if you have a group, there's always going to be somebody who's not able to because of a flare, because of pain. And I don't want to say milk it, but definitely use that. I mean, every aspect of our lives, the things that we kind of, I don't want to say take for granted, but the things that we've just kind of gotten used to. And, I mean, it's amazing the things that you can get used to when you live with chronic pain and you live with chronic illness. But these are exactly the things that healthy people don't necessarily understand. And these are the things that we need to show them and explain to them that this is how much these diseases affect us. And so last year, we had 3 main asks, and these are, the major issues that our Arthritis Foundation is working on, and that all of us within, Arthritis Foundation advocacy are working on. So the first was step therapy. Now, a lot of us have, talked about step therapy, and so what we've been trying to get is a bill passed basically protecting patients who, so that we're not subject to, okay, let me just go through this really quickly, and there will be more information for you that Arthritis Foundation can provide. But just to get through real quickly, step therapy is also known as fail first. It's basically the process of where an insurance company will kind of decide that even though your doctor has prescribed a certain medication for you, the insurance company decides that there's a different medication that's less expensive and we should try that one first. And overall across the board, that may be a nice cost-saving method for everyone, in general, but on very specific case-by-case basis, that does not work for us. Sometimes we have already had problems with the medication that they want us to try again. Sometimes we, there are specific reasons why our doctors have asked for a particular medication. So we've been trying to get legislation passed to basically to protect patients so that doctors can ask for exceptions, so that they can say, all right, well, I understand that's the practice across the board, but in this specific case, this patient needs the medication that I've asked for. This is actually already accepted across New York State, but we've, so we're all really lucky here, but we've been trying to get this across the board nationwide. Next is to co-sponsor, the next ask was for the ensuring children's access to specialty care. And this is basically to try and get more pediatric rheumatologists, but not just rheumatologists, but other subspecialties. And so this is a measure to try and get incentives put in place for medical students who want to go into those subspecialty fields. And this also is something we've been trying to get passed for several years. And finally, we always want to ask our representatives to join the Arthritis Caucus. Now, the meetings that I scheduled last year for our group were just with our senators. The main reason for that was because the senators represent such a large, since they represent the entire state, I could reach out to all of the 5 boroughs of New York City, plus some people in Long Island, plus some people in Westchester County, and we were all represented by the same senators. And so that's why these were the, we went specifically for what we're asking the senators to do. However, you could just as easily do this with your representatives. You would just have a smaller group because those representatives are, in the House are covering a smaller area. That might mean that you want to do that. You would be doing that on your own and not in a big group. For instance, I did that a couple years back. I actually met with my representative, Elliot Engel, at his office in the Bronx a couple years ago, and it was from that meeting, as a result of that meeting, that he actually joined the Arthritis Caucus, and it was a very exciting moment for me. and something that still kind of stays with me. And so this is something that if you're not able to join a big group, or if you're not able to, if there's nobody else in your area that is also a part of, of the same district who's also involved with advocacy, pretty much almost everything that I'm talking about today, you can do on your own. And so why don't we get into, so what we have to do is just kind of figure out who your representatives are, your senators and your House representatives, and then find out where they stand on each of those issues that we talked about. Now, when I did it, I had to do kind of a bit more research. I pretty much Googled each person and went to their website and looked up where they stand on all these different issues. But now, Arthritis Foundation has made it even easier for you, and Julie is going to show you how.
Thank you, Carrie. Yes. So in order to do some research on your members of Congress, it's a really simple process. I'm going to do a quick demo for you now. And I realize that we're running low on time, so I apologize if we spill over into the next half hour, but we're really enjoying having you all here, so please stick around. So if you want to do some legislative research, or if you want to take action with your Arthritis Foundation, you can come to arthritis.org/advocate and click into our Action Center here. And in our Action Center, we have lots of opportunities for you to engage. You can engage in different action alerts, or you can do some background research. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, you can have these 3 awesome tools. To find legislation, you can just search by keyword right here. So if I search step therapy, it's going to pull up the federal jurisdiction, so I can see federal step therapy bills. By clicking the Restoring the Patient's Voice Act, our bill that we're talking about in August recess, I can read more about the background of the bill, see where it is in committee, and what's most impressive and cool is this co-sponsors list. So you can look up and look directly for your member of Congress to see if they're engaging on this issue. If they're not listed in this co-sponsor list, they won't be engaging yet, and we can ask them to. If they are on the list, we're going to say, hey, thanks so much for engaging. We appreciate your sponsorship. But the next thing that we can do is click into any of these profiles for these members of Congress. So I've chosen Representative Robin Kelly, and through here I can see her capital address in Washington, D.C., but also her preferred district address. Now, this is not necessarily her only district address, but it's one of those primary ones. So you can use these tools to really do some of that background research in a streamlined way. You can check out their Facebook and their Twitter and their Instagram. You can go and learn about their birth date and all other things. And you can even message them directly through our system. So I encourage you to check it out. And with that, we're going to return back to our slides. Back to you, Carrie.
Okay, so now we'll kind of go through a little bit more of the logistics of sort of what I actually did and what you can do as you decide that you want to take this on for yourselves this year. So scheduling a district visit, again, I had a similar issue as we do last year. This year I had a similar issue as last year because, again, they were talking about canceling the August recess, postponing the August recess, shortening the August recess. And so I couldn't schedule a visit with my senators when they're home if I didn't know when they were going to be home. Ultimately, what I ended up doing was scheduling something for the last week of the month. And basically, I kind of figured that, A, that was my best chance of them actually being home, and B, if they never made it home or if I wasn't able to meet with them, I could still have a really, really powerful meeting with their staff. Just like we've done in the past when we're in D.C., we've had a lot of really, really great meetings with the staff, and then they relay that important information to our representatives and our senators to get their support on these issues. So you never, ever, ever want to discount a meeting with staff. That's always really, really important. So basically, it's fairly straightforward. What you'll want to do is reach out to the office. There would be on your representative's website, there would be a phone number or an email address. And what you can do is you can just call and ask them who specifically is the scheduler, and that's the person who you're really going to want to reach out to. You can email that person, say, hi, I am so-and-so, I live in this area, so this way they know that you're in their district. And you say, I would like to, get a group together to meet with Senator so-and-so, Representative so-and-so. And, you might want to tell them some of the issues that you want to talk about. Don't get into too much. To an extent, they really just kind of want to know if, what they need to give you time for. And, again, the most important thing is to follow up. A lot of times, they might get a phone call or they might get an email, and they have so many things going on, they might not get back to you right away. They might not get back to you at all. In fact, I remember with one of these, I had to follow up several times. So one tip that I give as far as following up is to alternate between phone calls and emails. You can make a phone call, you can speak with somebody, or you might get a voicemail, leave a message saying, again, who you are, where you live, and what you're trying to do. Same thing in an email, who you are, where you live, and what you're trying to do. What's great about alternating is, as just like we all have our preferences, I know personally I much prefer email to phone calls. I don't like talking on the phone. So how Julie got me to do a webinar is a whole other the power of Julie. But I don't like talking on the phone. I prefer email. But there are some staff who prefer the phone. And so if you go back and forth, then that staff person will surely get your message in whichever form they prefer, and then they can get back to you. But it's also helpful to mention, in your voicemail, hi, it's so-and-so, I sent you an email with a little more detail, or I will send you an email with a little more detail. And in that email, you can say, I left a message with so-and-so and just wanted to follow up. And so the follow-up is really, really important.
Right. We like to say our tagline is polite persistence persuades people. So remember those 4 Ps as you go into scheduling these district visits. Polite persistence persuades people. That's our tagline. And the other thing to remember is as you're going into the scheduling process, we have stock language that you can use as a mock phone script, and we have stock language that you can use to start your draft email. So we have a lot of that work that you can kind of Mad Lib style, plug and chug your details into, personalize, and then use as you enter into this process.
That's gret, yes. Polite persistence persuades people. Try and say it 5 times fast. I think trying to say it 5 times fast is harder than everything you'll need to do in order to get these meetings scheduled.
Perfect. Yes, so, that's the best tagline.
It's great. So in addition to reaching out and getting that meeting scheduled with the offices, the other thing that's really important if you're going to do this as a group is reaching out with and communicating with the other advocates and ambassadors in your area. So first and foremost, what I did was, like I said, I sent an email out to everyone in that, range, in that area. And I said, here's what I'm looking to do. I would love it if you join me. Let me know if you're interested. And what I did was my emails, as we kind of moved closer and closer to the date, I began reaching out to a smaller group because then I was, I was eventually only reaching out to the people who had responded and said, yes, I want to do this. I'm in. Count me in. I want to find out more. And I emailed again, and I let them know what the issues were that we were focusing on, those 3 that I talked about earlier. And I asked everyone that in that email if they had any personal stories that connected with one or more of those issues, and if they were particularly interested in sharing that story or talking about that issue or making that ask. Because it's always best, if you can have someone with that personal connection. I think most of us probably could speak to any of the issues, but the more we can really put a face on a specific situation where, for instance, a child who had to travel very, very far to get to a doctor is a really great story of why there's, why we need more pediatric rheumatologists, and there's that subspecialty ask. Someone who had to go through the step therapy process, someone who was told they had to take a different medication, is a really good person to talk about and make that step therapy ask. If you don't have that, but you don't have a personal connection to either of those, but you just have a powerful story, you might be the person to ask them to join the caucus, because what you're saying is we need you to know more so that you can be more involved, so that you can see how you can help us in the future. So as we kind of work, through that, we figured out which of the advocates in my area had specific connections and wanted to talk about each issue. And we kind of did that double because it was, since we were going to meet with 2 senators' offices. And then I was able to, again, as we got closer and closer, I was then able to send out an email with, the agenda and the schedule saying, okay, we'll meet at, outside this building at this time. When we get there, here is the order of things that we're going to do and who's going to speak about what at which meeting. So this way everybody knew what to expect. Again, I attached the issue brief to make sure that everybody had all the information that they would need to familiarize themselves more with the issues that they were going to be talking about. And then even though we had our core group and our set schedule, I sent another email out to the big group once again just to say, hey everyone, wanted to let you know, here's what we're doing, here's when we're doing it, here's how it's going so far, but there's still time to join us if you'd like. And, really hoping that we might get a couple more people to say, oh, I forgot, I meant to get back to you. It's always helpful to reach out to people more than once, because a lot of times, people might just be in the middle of something. I saw it on my phone. I didn't have time to look at it then, but, oh, that's right. Yes, I do want to be a part of this. It's always helpful. And again, what you'll want to do is sort of see how the other people in your group sort of respond. And, it might be that email is not your favorite your favorite way to communicate, or perhaps you think that, one of the things that, as Julie and I were talking about this, she had mentioned, you might want to have like a prep call where you have kind of a group conference call where you can all be on the phone talking to each other and ask and answer any questions and get that sort of all your details settled right then and there. Might be a good way to add, to get a little more confirmation. And again, the most important thing is to find the way that works best for you and follow up. So then the day that we got to our actual visits, what I really tried to do was kind of model this after the visits that we had in DC at this year at the Platinum, before the Platinum Ambassador Assembly, but model it after the way we've done things at the summit and the way we've done things at our New York State Legislative Day. And so basically with each meeting, what we did was I sort of introduced us as a group and, thanked them for welcoming us, for having us. And then we each went around the room and very, very briefly gave that little kind of, elevator pitch of just who we are, where we live, so that, again, you always want to reinforce, I live in your district, I live in your area, I am one of your constituents. So it was, our name, where we live, what kind of arthritis we have, if we can make it quick, how that affects us. And then, so that was kind of a little bit of a quick around the room. And then we went issue by issue. So we went to the person who's going to talk about step therapy, and then the person who's going to talk about the pediatric rheumatology, and then the person who's going to ask for the caucus. And with each of those, one of the things that's really important, I think really helpful, is bringing the paperwork with you, like actually printing it out. We may have emailed them before, and we emailed it to everybody in the group. But what's really, really helpful is if you actually print out those issue briefs and bring them with you so that you can give, whether it's your senator or your senator staff, your House representative or their staff, if you give them the actual paper with the information on it, it's a lot easier for them to follow along as you're talking about the issue, but it's also a lot easier for them to look back on it later on and to pass that information on to somebody else. So that's also really, really helpful. And what was really great during those meetings was that, and I think in some ways even better that we had with the staff than if we had been with the senators, is the staff had more time. And so they asked us a lot of questions, and those meetings ended up going a lot longer than we expected, which was amazing and incredible, so that it was a really, really great experience for all of us. And they were really interested, and they really wanted to know what was going on, what we were going through, what these issues were about, how they could help us. It was really everything that we could have hoped for, and I know that the senators themselves would not have had enough time to sit there in that much detail with us. So as I said before, what's really, really important is following up. So one thing that's really helpful is as soon as you get out of that meeting, go right onto social media, post a picture if you've taken a picture, which you should always try and take a picture if they will let you. And, post a picture on social media, tag them, thank them for taking the time, tag your representative, thank them for taking the time to meet with you. They love seeing themselves in a positive light on social media. They will often retweet it or share it on Facebook or wherever it is that we're doing it. They love seeing that, and so it's a really great immediate, instant gratification kind of thing on both sides. After the meeting, again, you want to follow up even more. Usually I would give it a few days, not more than a week, and then it's always helpful to send an email afterwards. And in that email, again, you want to thank them for taking the time to meet with us. You want to make sure that you, once again, what I like to do is kind of summarize once again what those issues were that we were asking for their support with. I usually attach those issue briefs again. You can never give them this information too many times because who knows what happened to that paper that we gave them before. So it's always a chance to, give it to them again. And ask if they have any questions, because that's always another great opportunity for additional follow-up. And the more follow-up that you have from in the beginning, setting those meetings up, to the day of, and the social media post afterwards, to the emails or phone calls to thank them afterwards and ask if they have any questions. Every one of those follow-ups helps to build that relationship between you and your legislative officials, and the more you build that relationship, the easier these meetings come as you move on into the future. And that's really what we want to do. Yes, we have these specific asks for right here, right now, but we're going to be dealing with arthritis for the rest of our lives. We're going to need their help for the rest of our lives. So we're going to keep on asking as long as they are in office, and then we're going to ask the next person. And the more you build that relationship between you and the representative or between you and their staff, the easier these meetings become as you go on from here on out. And the more fun, too.
That was wonderful, Carrie. Thank you so much for those tips and tricks. We're just going to wrap up our webinar now with a quick timeline for what our summer looks like. So for the rest of June and in July, we're looking for people in each state. In bigger states, we're looking for more than one people to organize in their representative district to volunteer to be leaders like Carrie. It's a really awesome way to translate your passion for advocacy into action. So email me at jeller@arthritis.org if you're interested, and we'll start connecting you with the resources you need to take action at this high level. During August and even in late July, we're looking for meetings to take place. So we'll want to make sure we're scheduling from here on out. And then in September, we'll be following up with everybody who participated either virtually, online, in person, as leaders, and so on. We want to say thank you so much and offer a quick opportunity for you all to ask any questions. If you'd like to ask them live, just hit #6 to unmute your line. Otherwise, type them into your chat or Q&A features now. Awesome. Well, with that, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for participating today, and especially thank you to Kerry Wong for sharing her awesome perspective on and insight and experience with us. She really is the expert in her disease and also in advocacy in this way. We can all follow in her footsteps this summer, and I hope that she inspired you and empowered you to take action with us this summer. And most importantly, we want to say thank you for your continued advocacy effort. It's amazing to have you all here. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email me at jeller@arthritis.org. Give me a phone call at 202-843-0094 or follow me on Twitter at JulieEllerAF. Send me a tweet. I'm always here to help you. Thank you so much, and especially thank you to Carrie for being our guest speaker today. Have a wonderful Wednesday, everyone.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.